Welcome back to the TCR shed, and today we're modifying the bulkhead on the classic Mini behind me so it has enough room to house the Honda Vtec engine. Now I know I said on the last episode that we would be very close to spraying this car, but there is one job just getting in the way of doing all the Raptor seal underneath, and that is this huge gaping hole that I have cut into the car. And I'm going to get into exactly how I've done this, and we've got a hell of a way to go before we can call this complete. It's very technical, it's my first attempt doing this, so please go easy in the comments, but let's jump straight into it and I'll show you what I've done. Now, to speed the process up, I cut this out the other day. The top piece had to come out first, and then the bottom piece had to come out second, leaving me with this huge, horrible hole. The main reason why this bulkhead has had to be cut is to house the Honda Vtec engine, and the one thing that will be fouling the bulkhead is the inlet manifold on the engine. Now, I do have to buy a modified manifold made by Skunk, but it's still too big to fit in the front of one of these cars. Now, I really struggled to come to terms with having to cut this bulkhead out because I wanted to keep the car looking period, as well as giving someone the chance to revert this back should they win the car when I finish with it. More about that later. One thing I did do was ensure that the heater matrix that I'm lifting up here still fits in the Classic Mini. Now, obviously when shoehorning a different engine into a Classic Mini, the more room, the better. But I just couldn't come to terms with making it unnecessarily big. A lot of people do this. We'll put this shelf in here and square it off at the back, which means the heater matrix will no longer fit in the car, and also you'll struggle to get the original looking dashboard in the interior of the car. So what I decided to do was make this very rough 3D template, and I did use a bit of cardboard aided design to achieve this. And the bit that I've bent that you can see here, I haven't got any metal formers or anything. I've had to use what I've got, and that was just bending it over the edge of a workbench in the other garage, but with a little bit of persuasion. Now, I'm making this very difficult here. Come on boy. Wow, it wasn't this. Come on, there we go. Right, so ignore these horrible welds, they will be getting sorted. I've cut away here, which is the bit that tends to foul the manifold. I've sent it back, bent it up, bent it back on itself, and then the old dash rail pieces of metal I've cut back, chopped. I'm going to punch some holes through here, same with that piece, and then we're going to slide this piece of metal in, which again will need some persuasion. It's all looking very rough right now, and we're going to weld it in, and then from the other side, you can see from round here, I'm going to punch some holes and I'll be able to weld that on the back plate. All this overhang will be chopped off so it's nice and neat, which means the heater matrix can still be lifted up and fitted into place without fouling anything under there. And also I can fit the original clocks without having any issues, meaning that this Classic Mini will still look period from the inside and the outside when the bonnet is closed. Such a lot to think about and such little space to work in, but it doesn't stop there. The problem I now have with this is I've got to get it fitted into position, I've got to prep the areas, seam weld all that without it warping, get it welded in and get it looking tidy. But the issue that I have is I don't yet have the engine or the subframe to test fit this. So I am taking quite a bit of a risk, and you might think it's a bit of a stupid risk, but I'd like to call it calculated. Now, the reason I'm saying it's calculated risk is because I have done my research online. Although there aren't any exact measurements in millimeters, there are a couple of photos which I know people have pulled off successful engine swaps from doing this. So I've kind of just copied it by looking with my eyes, with adding my own bendy twist to it. So the first one is, it's from my friend Reese Williams. He's got a YouTube channel, does a few videos and stuff on his minis. He's done a beautiful Mark 1 pickup truck at the moment, but he's done this before, and he sent me some pictures, and I've basically just looked, and I will overlay these on the screen, and I've tried to implicate where I've cut. I've not cut over as far as he has on this side because I don't think you need to, looking at other photos, and I've tried to just replicate it so I can fit the heater matrix in. Doing that, what he's done, I don't think you can run the standard heater matrix. I just want this car looking period inside, as I previously mentioned. And then the other one is this one that I've seen online, where it does have the bit of a bend in. It's got a shallower bend in than mine, but this should work. The only saving grace for this is I'm not going to paint the engine bay in the car or the inside until I have the donor vehicle. Now, I'm currently in negotiations with somebody on Gumtree about buying a donor vehicle. The issue is he's a million miles away, the engine does have a few problems, and he wants quite an obscene amount of money for the car at the moment. So not all my eggs are in one basket. So I'm going to soldier ahead with this to get it to a point where it can still be adapted, because progress is progress, and quite frankly, I've had this car for so long and not a lot has happened on it. So in today's episode, I know it's took a while to get to this, we're going to go into a bit of welding and getting this box together. So with a slurp of a cup of tea, roll those shots, Thomas. So as you can see, I've got all this clamped in place. Now, if you're wondering what these little blue things are, they're called butt weld clamps, and they are absolutely fantastic for getting two pieces of metal perfectly level, ready to weld. Now, the fitment isn't the best here. I would have liked it a little bit tighter than that and not as wide, but I should just be able to get that with a MIG welder if I put my copper bar behind to stop the welds blowing through. And then over here, again, I'm a little bit tight, but I can force it down that way just to get that bit more play. Now, I'm not going to weld it up in position because there is quite a bit of overhang, and I need to trim that down so I can get the piece out and back in, or in and back out. You get the gist, but look at this. If I just move you around the other side whilst trundling over absolutely everything I possibly can in the garage, I'll show you this. Here's the overhanging bits here, so I'm just going to get a pen and scribe up there, so when I take it out I know where to cut. I need to punch some holes in here like I said before, and I also need to punch a hole in this piece to weld it in from behind. Now if you look underneath, the fitment is rather good, apart from this piece here, which I'm thinking I'm going to chop off and put on afterwards, because I'm also going to have to seam weld along here, but the fitment along the bottom is rather tasty. Knowing what I know now, this is going to be very awkward to remove because there is so much metal welded in, and it's not going to be easy to manipulate to get out. But yeah, just like I thought, this is not. Oh, actually, we may be in with the. No, we're not. If I can get this out, I am a god. It's stuck. Back to the drawing board. Oh. Yes laddie, we did it. And the key to that, guys, is patience, and you will get there. Now, what you will see, if I move you in closer, is where this piece of metal currently sits and where that line sits, there is a deviance, and that's because we have to manipulate it into shape. So all I'm going to do now is grind that up, tack it in place, clean all the edges up and shove it in the car and get it welded in. Sounds a lot simpler than I'm making out, but we'll get there. So I've just ground that up, and as you can see, it fits 10 times better, especially down here. Underneath, I've took the lip off there, and it's starting to take shape. But, oh, in fact, I even took the lip off the bottom and I've got a better fit along there as well, which I'm pleased with. And this side is just looking even better. I need to prep all the areas ready for welding, which means just taking the etch primer off down to bare metal, putting weld through primer on the bits that are going to be touching that I can't get to afterwards to stop the rust coming back, which I'm going to do tomorrow because I'm absolutely knackered. Honestly, you don't understand how much time has gone into that, just trying to make it fit. There was a lot that happened behind the scenes of this video, whereas now, yeah, we're getting there. So I'll join you in the morning where we weld this and we get it in and finished. And then it's time for paint. Good night. Good morning. We had a slight issue last night, something that was playing on my mind. I ended up phoning my mate Reese and having a chat with him, and I sent him the pictures of the bulkhead and everything that we've put together, and he had his concerns that it may start to foul the skunk manifold, so I have had to adapt it slightly. So that's what I've been doing this morning. I'll show you what I've done. I've basically had to make the box a bit bigger and just make a bit more room for the Honda engine to slide in. It's so difficult trying to do this when I don't have the donor car yet. I'm just basically cross-referencing photos and asking for help from friends, and I can only do what I can do really. So I'll show you what we've done. So what's basically happened here is this shelf that I made that did look rather pretty, I must admit. It was too far forward and Reese thought it was going to cause some rubbing issues. Now, obviously I can't hold Reese to his comments. He said I may get away with it, but I'm just guessing. What I should really have done is bought the donor car and then had it here to do this, because if I get it wrong, I'm going to have to do it all again. But it's a risk I'm willing to take because I simply don't have the space to have the donor car here and all the bits in the garage while still carrying out this bodywork. So I removed the box that we made yesterday, I cut it up again, leaving just the floor piece in here, and then that bend, I shallowed it out just by bending the seam out of it to lower it back, creating a bit more room here, and hopefully the skunk manifold shouldn't hit. So, to put it into perspective, that was the side profile of how much I've took out, and when I hold it in over here, if it'll fit, you can actually see how much more room that has created. It's probably gone down 25 mil and it's probably gone back 25 mil. So now it's time to tack it all in place, remove it, seam weld it all, prep all the edges and weld it back in, which means one thing, cue the montage.
I've been contemplating all my time. My thoughts make me tired, just running through my mind. Wonder if there's peace I can find, instead of always being on the ground. I need a new purpose.
So, with this welded, it's time to get the grinder out and clean it up. And then once I've cleaned it up, we're going to offer it in the car, clean the edges, repeat the process with this hot glue gun, and we should have a modified bulkhead so we can fit a Vtec engine in this club.
Run away into your escape. Run away, you're never too far to run. Run away into your escape. Run away. It gets so loud that I can barely hear. But your words speak much louder than all my fears. Sometimes I just wanna disappear, running until I can feel you near. I need a new purpose, I'm looking for so much more. Don't leave me here searching, you're just what I'm longing for. When times are getting crazy and everything seems hazy, is there some place for safety I could go? Run away
And after all that hard work, we've finally finished the bulkhead modification, which will allow us to fit the Honda Vtec engine when I find a donor vehicle, of course. There's one thing I've learned from this, and it's simply to just throw yourself in at the deep end and have a go. Like I said earlier, I've never actually modified a car to this extent, but you only learn one way, and that's simply by making mistakes and learning from them. So that leaves me to say that the only things we've got left to do is modify that strut mount, the other strut mount. We've got to mess around with the steering column, and then when we have the donor vehicle and the subframe, things should start to come together, which means I need your help. If any of you guys know of a Honda that is for sale that will have a B16B engine or a B18 engine, please drop me a message. I do want an original Honda car. I don't want a Mini that's already been modified so I can take the bits off it and throw it together. I simply want to document the whole process of this, including buying the donor car, filming the 0 to 60 beforehand, and then seeing what it is in this. So if you do know of any cars for sale, please do get in the comments. Please drop me an email below or hit me up on Instagram. All the links are in the description. With that said, guys, I will see you very soon. Do me a massive favour and click this link here and watch the video where I travel to 5 countries in one day on one charge in an electric vehicle, accompanied by my southern swan of a friend, Mr. Jim Starling.
We can cry when it's over.
I know you've been waiting all episode, but it's finally here. 3, 2, 1. Aww.